we can go over quickly how the hand movements go for the French braid now, because I know I went a little bit fast with that. I just wanted to go over the basic concept before we got into the complicated stuff like where the hands go. So let's go over the hand movements now. So we've got our section at the back of the head. It's all picked out. And now I can't do my hand movements the way I did with the basic braid because my hands just don't go that way. Like I'd have to have my hand like this. So I'm going to pick out my sections. And once I've got them picked out, I'm going to hold them. We're going to have 3 places we hold. We're going to hold with the pinky, we're going to hold with the middle finger, and we're going to hold with these fingers. Okay? So I've got my outside sections under my pinky, as you can hopefully see. And I've got my middle section under my middle finger and my thumb and first finger. That lets me have these fingers still free to grab as we pass back and forth. So we're going to turn my hand, pass the outside edge to the middle, and grab it with my opposite hand. Okay, and we're going to pass this one over to these fingers that are ready to go. Good. Now if you want to do a basic braid all the way down, you would just end up with like a legless thing, and that would look great. So you can do that too. You can do that anytime. But that's not what we're doing here. So we've got our basic braid. Our first steps are done. We are ready to go into the French braid. So I'm going to hold this whole braid in one hand because I want my other hand to be free so that I can pick out these sections. So we've got the outer section under my pinky, the next section, and I've also got it weaving through to be under my thumb just so I can pass it back and forth. That just is easier for me, but do whatever you want with that. So got my bottom section under my pinky and under my thumb. That way I'm going to keep it separate from the other sections. Even if I use my thumb and finger to grab any other hair, it's still separated because it's under my pinky as well. This next section, the middle section, is going to go under my middle finger and let it drop. And then this last section, actually I'm going to hold it in my thumb as well, but I'm still keeping them separate. And this last outer section is going to go under my fingers here where I can grab them. So they're also separate, but I can now use this hand freely to pick out my section. Okay, I've got my section picked out. Now I'm going to drop from my thumb and finger, I'm going to drop this outer section into my new section that I've just created. Okay, and now I've got my new section and my old section together in these fingers, but it's still stuck to the rest of my hair. So I want to pass the whole thing back to these fingers now so that I can brush out this tangle. Okay, and make sure that I'm not pulling in hairs that I don't want. And I can also use this hand now to smooth back this edge and make sure that I'm happy with how this looks. Okay, so now I'm back to having all of my sections in one hand. I've got my outside section, my middle section, and my outside section again. And I'm holding all 3 ends in this hand because that just makes it easier. But again, when you are practicing this, if you find a better way to do this and a different way to hold your hands, just do that, because this is just the way that I've done it from my own years of practicing. Do it any way that works for you. Okay, so now we are back to our basic braid. We want to pass this section over and make this the middle section. So we are going to pass this middle section, or we're going to turn this hand. We're going to take this middle section just so that it's out of the way. And we're going to pass this outside section over this middle section and into these fingers. Okay, so I'll pass that over. And now I've got a little bit of a tangle going because I've got a few extra hairs caught. Try to separate those out. Okay. Sometimes you gotta stick it in your mouth if you have a problem. Okay, so I've got this section now crossed over. Now I want to add to this section next, to this section next. So I'm going to pass all this hair into my right hand so that this left hand will be free. So I'm going to grab the middle section with this finger, the last section with my thumb and finger, and now the left hand is free to separate out the next section. Take the next section and add it in. So I've just dropped this section, this outer section, the old outer section, in with the new one, and then I'm going to pick it up again. Separate that out. Okay, it's all nice and smooth now. So separate that out, it's all nice and smooth now. Okay, I think I'm out of frame for that a little bit. Okay, so I've picked up my section, I've smoothed it out, I've passed it all back into this right hand, and now I can pass the whole new section over the middle back to my right hand again. Okay, so now this is the new section and it has become the middle section. I'm going to pass all the hairs back to my left hand, bring up my right hand, and then we are going to go through this again. So picking out another section with my fingers, got picked out, and dropping my new section here, my old outer section into the new outer section. That, pass it, the whole thing back up just so I can straighten this out. And if your hair is not as long, you probably don't have to do that part. I just have to do that every single time or I'll get like a wild rat's nest. Okay, so I've got them all back into my left hand now. And now I've got to remember that this piece still has to go over to the middle. So we're going to pass the middle section over to my right hand. And we're going to pass the other section over into the middle. Okay. And now back to the left hand, left side. So the right hand does all three pieces once again. You're going to pick out a section. And now we're getting to the bottom, so I don't want to pick out too big a section. I don't want to pick out like this whole thing and leave nothing for the other sections. So I'm just going to pick out about a third once again. This will be my last section that I add. Okay, so I've got it all in my right hand once again, and we're going to drop those fingers into this hand, and we can move this section over across the middle and pass it over to these fingers here. Okay, pass it all back into the left hand. So I've got my one section under my pinky, my next section is going to go under my middle finger, and my next section in between my thumb. Okay, separate out this section, combine it with the old one, and then pass it over to the new hand. Okay, and then we have, so I've got one little section left here. It's pretty thin, that's okay. It's going to go into my last section because this is the third section and it hasn't got any of this underneath here yet. Okay, and I like to get those three sections, like I said, spread out throughout the rest of the hair because normally this one is not very long, just the way it turned out, but usually that's where your longest hair is and you don't want to end up with a braid that's not even. So we're going to add this last little section, and you also want to make sure that your braids are getting kind of an equal amount of hair, otherwise you're going to end up with a lopsided braid again because you'll have one strand that ends up being like pinky size and the others are just these big thick strands, and then you can get kind of a wonky braid. So we're going to try to avoid that today, and that's how I usually do it, by just making sure that at the end I've added all three sections get a chunk of this bottom hair. Okay, so we are back here. We just have to remember which one we did last. I can tell by feeling that it was this side is the last side that I passed over, so that means this side now has to go over. Make sure it's all nice and smooth. Okay, so now I've got still one outside section under my pinky, the middle section under my middle finger, and another outside section under my pinky. And we're going to go back into doing the basic braid. So we can turn your hand and pass the outer section from that side into this hand, these fingers. Okay. Pass the outer section to your fingers. And this is a little easier in some ways because now you can just grab it with your thumb instead of your middle finger. And this is where I like to turn around. You could just do that all the way down your back, but I feel like usually you have to go up because your arms just don't go that way. And then sometimes your braid can end up being too tight on top and it just feels uncomfortable. And I haven't really gotten past that problem ever, so I usually just like to spin my braids around, and plus I like to see it on the side. I just think it looks better for myself. So I kind of forget which one I did now. This is the last one. This is the one that's in the middle, and it came from this side. So that means I have to pass over from this side, like that. And now I'm going to spin around, and I'm going to start braiding on the front here. So you can see how I have it in my hand here. I've still got outside section under the pinky, middle section under the middle finger, outside section under the thumb. And now I can spin around. Haven't moved those are all still the same. And now I can look and see which one is the middle one. So as you can see, I've got kind of a turn going here. So what we can do is just kind of hold our hands off to the side and continue braiding. If you keep braiding when it's like this, you'll just end up with like a 90-degree turn. One braid will be facing this way, one braid will be facing this way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like to make it look a little bit straighter because then you have the ability to just push it back over your back when you are sick of it being in the front. So what we can do to fix that is we just kind of turn our hands a little bit and continue braiding, and then it will fix itself, okay? But let's not do that because that's just a little confusing. You can play around with that when you are doing your own braiding. So we are just going to go back to doing a basic braid. And you can see, because I did that at the end, my ends are pretty close to the same. They're pretty close to the same distance apart, or the same size. This one's a little skinny. These ones are a little skinnier than the other one. But you can see they're pretty close to the same size. They're pretty close to the same length. So that is giving me this really nice, even looking braid. And that's kind of what we want. And then they all become one. And now I've got this one little chunk kind of sticking out here. But if I'm going to, I think it's called pancaking. I'll add in the right name. But I'm going to add spread out all these little hairs anyway. So by the time I've done that, go. So that's kind of hidden that loose piece of hair, and it's made our braid look a lot thicker, a little more lived in. Not so perfect, but that's really nice on a braid, I think. So that's good. Okay, yeah, we have, you can see that little piece here, and I could go back and braid this again. But sometimes that gets a little complicated because then you have to try to keep track of where all your pieces are, which piece is the middle piece. It's a bit of a nightmare sometimes, and then you have to start the whole braid again. So if you can avoid restarting a section, that's the best thing you can do, because you do not want to have to start all over again from scratch. And if you get yourself confused, you might have to. Or if you lose a section, see, now I've just kind of pulled it through here. So now that bump that I had is at the bottom here, but no one's going to see it. It's kind of hidden. Okay, so that's it. That is our basic French braid. I hope that was helpful. And again, we can kind of push it to the side if we want to. It's just going to be a little looser on this one side. Play around with it a bit if you want. Okay, and we can fix up the front. I didn't do it very tight, so my front didn't really get too messed up here. But you could add in some bobby pins or whatever you want. If you want this to be up a little higher, you can add some bobby pins. I want that to be up a little higher. Or if you've got some flyaways. But really, I think a nice, loose, natural looking braid is a really nice, easy thing you can do, and you can wear it every day. Nice everyday look, but you can also dress it up if you have some fancy clips, or if you just put this with a nice outfit and some nice earrings, it would really dress it up. Or you could just wear this to the grocery store, because that's what I often do. If I'm getting groceries or something and I can't handle dealing with my long hair anymore, it goes in a braid, and then problem solved. Or for working out, I do that a lot as well. Really, once you've practiced this, it becomes so easy. Once you practice it on somebody that you can look at their hair. That's really the best way that I can recommend doing it. And then practice it on yourself a million times. If you set up some mirrors so that you can see the back of your head, you can do that, but it can get confusing if you're trying to watch the back of your head and also feel what you're doing with your hair. I've tried that before. It didn't really work for me because it just got me confused about what was happening back there. And of course the mirrors are backwards too, right? So you're not looking at exactly what you think you're looking at, but do whatever you want to do, whatever makes it easiest for you to learn, and just practice it. Just do it a bunch of times and it will get easier. Okay, on to the next video. Bye!